G'day, I'm Mark from Self-Sufficient Me, and this video is about how to cure olives in a jar. Yes, that's right, a simple glass jar, 1 kilogram or 1 litre, because that's as many olives as I got off my 10 olive trees last season. Being in a subtropical climate, olives don't do terrific, but having said that, I'm standing between two Helena olive trees. They're both about 7 or 8 meters tall. They have grown fantastically, which olive trees do grow well in subtropical regions and warmer regions. It's just that they haven't fruited yet. But the reason that I selected this variety of olive was because they're grafted from St. Helena Island off the east coast of Brisbane, which was a penal colony back in the 1800s. And they grew a successful olive orchard, which isn't far from me, and those olives were imported back to Italy. Can you believe that? So yes, even though it is a subtropical climate, you can grow olives in warmer zones if you pick your olive right. Well, I hope so. So far, finally, after 7 or 8 years, our olives have started to fruit. And like I said, last season we got 1 kilogram of olives off our trees. That's not a lot, but I tell you what, we've cherished every one of them. I've got about 10 left, so to finish the video off, I'll take you upstairs to the back deck and have a taste test of some olives that I've done up there. Anyway, how to cure them in a glass jar. Curing olives to me was a real sort of mystery. You heard about the ancient Greeks curing them in crocks, big crock pots and all that, and doing it in brine, and how do you do it, and how long, 9 months, I read on the internet, and 5 weeks, and then I started reading about how to do it in 12 hours. And when I followed this story, I realized that commercially, a lot of olive producers or manufacturers, once they get the olives, cheat by using lye or sodium hydroxide, which is what they use in Drano to unclog drains. So it's a pretty bad chemical, and so they get rid of the oleupian, which is the bitterness or the bitter compound in an olive, through using a chemical to wash it away. And then they've got to soak and get rid of that chemical through, soaking it through water and rinsing them out. And then we eat them. That doesn't sound right to me at all. Yes, it cures olives quickly, but nah. That was another big reason for me why I wanted to cure my own olives. So here's my simple method of curing olives in a glass jar. Get a glass container, this is one that I've done my olives in. 1 kilogram of olives, 1 litre container, and you just make up enough brine to suit. Apologies for any wind that you might be getting buffering in the microphone. We've had a pretty gloomy day today. If you want real step-by-step in-depth information, go to the description below, and there's a link there where I've written all this down. But anyway, it's pretty simple. You just need to work on the quantity of 1 tablespoon of sea salt, a good sea salt, the fine stuff because it's easier to dissolve in water, per 1 cup of spring water or filtered water. You don't want chlorinated water because the chemical will interact with the curing process, and you don't want extra chemicals that aren't otherwise needed in your olive mix anyway. So 1 teaspoon of sea salt dissolved in 1 cup of water is the ratio. You make enough of that to suit whatever vessel or container or amount of olives that you're curing. Before you put the olives in there for osmosis to take place, where the olipian is transferred out by the water during that way of doing stuff, whatever it is. Before you do that, to make the process faster, get a paring knife and cut the olives lengthways around the whole olive, one way to the seed and then the other way to the seed. So you've got basically the olive cut in quarters, but obviously the olive isn't broken up. The olive will stay intact even though those cuts are there, so don't worry about that. It won't hardly look like the olives have been cut at all, but this will speed up the process, or the curing process. The other thing you could do is, I suppose, is get rid of the seed altogether and punch the seeds out like you would do a cherry or something, but I just find that this is faster and easier. So once you've got the slits in the olives, then put them in the jar, cover them in brine, and ensure that the top of the olives are weighed down with something. Like I use in this particular jar that I showed you, some smaller glass jar lids, and that just sits over the top of the olives and keeps them underneath the brine. Then leave it sit on the bench for about 7 to 12 days for the first curing. You'll see that the water will go a real brown colour. It might bubble a little bit. You'll put the top on the jar. If it's got a seal around it, it might bubble out a little bit. Don't worry about it too much. Have a towel or something underneath so that it's not going to go everywhere. But don't worry about that so much. And then after about the 12th day period, tip all that brine out and replace it with a new fresh amount of brine for your second brining, and then leave that for about 5 weeks. After that 5-week period, have a taste of your olives. If they're still too bitter, which they probably will be, give it another brining. So tip that out and brine for a third brine. New fresh brine, and then leave that for about 8 to 9 weeks, maybe 10, and then test it then. In the end, I brined my olives about 3 to 4 times to the 15-week mark. At 15 weeks, my olives were spot on to eat and just beautiful. Beautiful without even anything else. They were just nice straight out of the brine with that little bit of bitterness that the olipian gave, which was just perfect. But you know, of course, if you add things to it, that's fine. But like I said, if that's confused you, my explanation, just go to the links below and you'll be able to see it all written down there, all nice. Plus there's a discussion on it and a few hints and tips. But basically, that's how to cure olives in a simple, small 1 litre jar like that, or any container you want. And here we are on our back deck. We've got a 2-story place. So this olive behind me here, we have 2 olives, one on this side and one on the other side. They're both Manzanellos. This one here's about 7 metres at least tall. Maybe it's 8. It's a huge olive tree, and we've espaliered it on the back with some latticing. And olives espalier beautifully. I mean, it's like our grapevines off our place. I love having fruit trees, particularly this type of Mediterranean type trees, off our place, because they just I don't know, they give it a really nice feel, and they're pretty handy. I mean, an olive tree, yes, in the subtropics and warmer climates that don't have a really cool winter, that's appropriate for olives. They don't tend to fruit as much, but that doesn't mean that olive trees are useless, because the foliage of the tree is very useful as an antioxidant. You can pull the leaves off here, walk off outside or off your deck in our case, grab a handful of leaves, steep it in some cooking and get a good antioxidant and flavour hit in your food. You can rip some leaves off, dehydrate them, crinkle them up, use them as a tea, and that's a beautiful antioxidant tea. The olipian in the olive and the olive leaf and all that is fantastic antioxidant. It has been proven in the laboratory with mice, and I've done quite a bit of reading and research on it, and there's no doubt in my mind that eating olives, especially olives that you've cured at home yourself that have some of that oleupian left in it, which is important, because if your olives are tasting watery, you've probably got them way too far cured, or they've been done, like we were talking before, with a chemical, and yeah, they might not be at all bitter, but they might not be great to eat either, as far as nutrition wise goes and antioxidants. Anyway, enough rambling on. Let's wrap this video up with my promised taste test. These olives here, I've done them up. It's really simple, and I'd recommend, if you're going to pull your olives out of the brine and flavour them at all, because they taste great straight out of the brine in my book with just the olive taste. But if you're going to flavour them up, just use a minimal amount of herbs, and that's best. If you get too complex, it's like overdoing it in cooking. It sort of drowns out the flavours, and then it's no good anyway. So in this, I've just had some sliced ginger, I've added a little bit of lemon juice, a little bit of white wine vinegar, some dried chilli, some crushed garlic, and instead of using olive oil to keep these in, because I'm storing them in the fridge through the marination process, I've used canola oil, because olive oil is great to store olives in a marinate type of thing, but it solidifies in the fridge. So if you're going to use olive oil, that's fine. Just remember that before serving, you're going to pull them out of the fridge, let them get to room temperature, so that that olive oil then melts and is not a crust of sort of white film on top of it. With canola oil, that doesn't happen, and you also, the canola oil isn't overpowering. It also doesn't drown out the olive taste. So I'd recommend that if you're going to marinate them in the fridge in an oil of some sort. It's up to you, but that's what the ingredients of this is. You know, there's other terrific recipes. Make your own up. So let's have a taste. I already know what this is going to taste like. Yeah. Well, I first of all get the marinade, the garlic and the ginger and the hit of lemon, and then I'll quickly get to the olive, pardon the pip, and I get that home cured oleupian hit, that bitterness. It's not overly bitter that sends my eyes back in my head. It's just that hint of bitterness that runs on the back of the palate, that I know that this olive's been home cured. And it's that bitterness that keeps me sort of coming back for more. And a little bit of a beer at the same time, or a wine. Home cured olives. Please do it. If you're in a region where you're lucky enough to grow olive trees that fruit really great, unlike mine, well then please grow olive trees and cure your own in a simple jar. It's really easy to do. I can't believe how easy it is. It takes you, like I said, 15 or so weeks, and you've got beautiful home cured olives full of antioxidants. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye for now. One more. I've only got about 10 left out of my kilo. I have to save some for the wife.